everybody. Jimmy Smith. Apologize right off the bat for my setup here. I'm on the road in San Antonio, Texas, because I'm doing a Pro Box TV on Saturday. Anyway, so I'm doing play-by-play for a boxing match on Saturday. If you have time, check it out. Pro Box TV. The app, it's free, so it's fun to watch. Anyway, enough about that. UFC 312 coming up this weekend. Time to once again make my picks. duPlessis versus Sean Strickland. A really interesting, especially co-main event and main event, but some really kind of crossroads fights from some Australian fighters. This one's, of course, down under in Australia. So a lot of consequences for this card all the way around and some interesting odds from my perspective. So let's start off with the main card. Jake Matthews versus Francisco Prado. If you look, depending on your book, Jake Matthews is like a 2-1 favorite over Francisco Prado. Jake Matthews is a really interesting story because it's something I've seen before in MMA where he got into the UFC. He's 19 years old. When I called his fight in Perth against Li Jinglong, he was still growing. He said, I got an inch taller since joining the UFC. I mean, that's how young he started. And he was really solid. And a lot of times in a situation like that, you think, oh man, he's really solid at 19. He's going to be great at 25, 26. Folks, it's really hard to learn on the job in the UFC. The developmental years where you're really getting better are on the way up. Your fights are not, if you're headed to the UFC, most guys you're going to beat pretty easily at the local level. So a lot of time in the gym is spent making you better. So as you're fighting, those first 10 fights or so somewhere else, you're getting much, much better. Especially, once again, you're past 19, 20, you start getting that man strength, you develop a lot more. If you get in the UFC young, you're worried about the next opponent more than you're worried about your own development as a fighter. Some fighters do really well because they're good for their age, like they develop quickly, but when you run into other guys in their mid-20s, you start having problems. Jake Matthews is one of those guys where you don't start at 19 and do this. You kind of stutter a little bit, especially, once you're in the UFC young, you're worried about the opponent, not necessarily getting better. And so from 20 to 30, he's won more than he's lost, but he hasn't been a breakout star that we thought he might be, being solid in the UFC, once again, at 19 years old. Hasn't really shown that. He's a huge favorite in this fight. You see what the UFC's doing. What they're doing is Jake Matthews, local boy, Australian fans like him a lot. He's had some up and down fights, of course, lost. But, losing guys like Sean Brady, there's no shame in that. But it's the idea that when he's won, Andre Filou, a shot Diego Sanchez, Emil Meek, okay. But his losses haven't been to great guys either. Michael Morales, Matthew Semmelsberger, nobody great. So they're trying to get, obviously, an Australian win in the opener and get the crowd really into it and all that stuff. That's why they're throwing him up against somebody who doesn't have a winning record in the UFC. The odds, to me, are too skewed. I would say Jake is going to win, probably by decision, but for the money, you can't bet on him. DraftKings, he's a -2.5 favorite. I don't see that at all. He shouldn't be that much of a favorite. Maybe bet the under on this one if you can get good odds on it, because he might start out just with a lot of enthusiasm. He's in front of the hometown crowd. He gets an early finish. So my pick is Jake, but you're not going to make any money on the guy. So if you're going to make money, you got to go the opposite way and bet on Francisco Prado. So moving on, moving up the card, another interesting Australian story: Jimmy Crute versus Rodolfo Belato. Jimmy Crute was the number one fighter under the age of 25. Top 25 under 25 list for ESPN a couple years ago. He was supposed to be the guy. Certainly a contender in the light heavyweight division. He was young. He was powerful. He had beaten some veteran guys on the way up. You thought he could do great things. And he just kind of ran into a brick wall. Ended up, his last 4 fights, he's lost 3 and 1 was a draw. And then in the rematch, he got guillotined. Just didn't look to be the guy he was when he was younger. It started with the Anthony Smith fight. If you remember that one, he got drop foot, which is when you get leg kicked and it kills the nerve leading to your ankle, and your ankle becomes numb and you can't use it anymore and it folds in on itself. It's called drop foot. So anyway, gets stopped by Anthony Smith, and he gets knocked out by Jamal Hill, and then Alonzo Menifield. He gets a draw, and then rematch, he gets guillotined. It's just nothing went right for the guy. And he stepped away from the sport for a little bit. His last fight was in 2023, took some time off, now getting back into it, obviously early 2025. Could he come back and be, what he once was? Possibly. He's 28 years old. A lot of people, that's their physical prime, but you never know, right? You take a few beatings and you're never the same guy. It happens plenty. So in this case, once again, the UFC is not giving him a cupcake in Belato, who's a real fighter, very, very tough. It's one of those situations where if the UFC's testing to see if Crute is still Crute, and if he isn't, they're going to find out real fast. This guy's on a 4-fight winning streak. Hasn't beaten anybody great. He's aggressive. He can be a hard puncher. I like his versatility on the inside. He's just physically a strong guy, and that's going to be tough for Jimmy Crute to get over coming back after the layoff. I liked Jimmy Crute a lot back in the day. I just think with the 4 losses, facing a guy who's streaking, another guy who's, once again, 29 years old, he's right in his physical prime. It's a bad fight for him. I got to go with Rodolfo Belato. If you're going against Jimmy Crute, it's probably early, because we tend to see early whether a guy still has it mentally. I'd go with the under, and I'd go Belato with the early finish. So Jimmy Crute, I don't think he gets back on top with this fight. So, moving on up the card. Justin Tafa versus Taliesin Tashira. Justin Tafa is Justin Tafa, right? He just walks forward, throws big punches, and he wins or loses early. He's facing a guy who has all first-round knockouts in Tashira. It's, once again, clear what the UFC is doing, which is, hey, let's have this big brawling fight. These two monsters going at it. Someone's going down in the first round. It's a coin flip fight. Either guy can get clipped on the chin and lose, and that's it. They're both short-range punchers. Neither guy is particularly versatile. Neither guy is going to go for a takedown. Neither guy has a really versatile striking offense either. They're not going to do much but punch. When I look at that, it's whomever you can get odds on. Go that way, right? It's pretty simple. Tafa's not great. Tafa's coming off a loss. Yeah, he's in his hometown. Sure, that's great, but in a fight like this where whoever gets clipped on the chin is going to lose. My advice in something like this is always go with the dog, because if it's a coin flip fight, where can you make money? Looking at the odds right now, it's pretty much a coin flip. Tashira is a slight favorite at minus 142. Justin Tafa is plus 120. This is on DraftKings. What's the under? Of course, the under is like minus 230. So it's going to be tough to make money. Take Tafa, take the under, parlay those together, because, hey, Tafa could land on the chin and knock him out, so you'd make plus money on that. Parlay it with the under, because I don't see this going past whatever it is, 1.5 rounds. I don't see that either. So I definitely go Tafa with the under. See if you can make some money on that. It's a coin flip fight. Now, into the nitty-gritty. Zhang Weili versus Tatiana Suarez. If there was a real threat to Zhang Weili, I'd say, 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said Tatiana Suarez, that's it. Big, physical, standout wrestler, strong, great submission game, really confident, young, she's in her prime. She has all the physical tools, and that's where Zhang Weili really shines, is she's a monster. Everybody's seen the viral video of her, high-crotching Francis Ngannou and lifting him up. The dude was 290. Right? She's just a beast. She's an absolute monster. She's more technical. She can do more things than Tatiana Suarez. But the logic of this fight, and we'll go into the odds in a second, is Tatiana Suarez can bully her, can be the first fighter to really bully her. Yeah, she got knocked out on the outside, right? By Rose Namajunas. That happens. But no one's really been able to get in there and physically hang with her the way people think Tatiana Suarez will be able to. There. 10-0, undefeated. She doesn't know how to lose. Zhang Weili, of course, the champ at 115 pounds. She has looked absolutely phenomenal. Yan Xiaonan, in her last fight, she pitched a shutout. Looked absolutely incredible in that fight. Same thing against Amanda Lemos. Dominated Carla Esparza. She just looked really, really good in the last few fights. She's well-rounded. She's strong. She's physical. She's dominant. 35, so she's a little long in the tooth for MMA, but she's still looking good. The issue I have with this fight is you heard when I was breaking this one down, I said a few years ago, Tatiana Suarez, when she was firing on all cylinders, might have been the person to beat Zhang Weili, whoever the champ was, at 115. I have problems with her inactivity the last few years. For people who don't know the story, she was injured in 2019, out for 4 years, dealing with various neck injuries, knee injuries, I believe. Came back, she fought twice in 2023. She's been out for over a year. So she had another injury, had to come back, and so she's kind of going in cold. Honestly, if she had gone in on 3 or 4 fights where she looked dominant in the fight she had in 2023, but it's only 2 and they were, over a year ago. So the problem is if she went in on a 3-fight streak and was really doing great things, I would probably favor Tatiana. But a year off, clearly dealing with injuries in that year, the momentum I don't like. I don't like the momentum she's going in with. And also, this is a coin flip fight. Right now on DraftKings, for example, minus 120 for Tatiana Suarez, plus 100 for Zhang Weili. So basically a coin flip. They're not giving her Zhang Weili any edge as champion. So I put my money on Zhang Weili. So I think it's absurd to not favor a dominant champion when Tatiana's been out for so long. Once again, if she had momentum coming in, I think it's her. But you can't afford to make a mistake against Zhang Weili. You cannot afford to do it. She's too dominant. She's too good. She knows what she's doing. She's too confident right now. And the odds being what they are, I got to go with Zhang Weili, probably by decision. The over is minus 140, so maybe parlay Zhang Weili on the over. To me, that makes perfect sense. But Zhang Weili by decision is my pick over Tatiana Suarez. I just wish Tatiana had those 3 or 4 fights leading up, last year, and we had some idea of where she was without a big layoff. Kind of sucks. So the main event, Dricus du Plessis versus Strickland. This is one of those where both of these guys snuck up on me. I did not early on in their UFC careers think either one of these guys was going to be champion. Strickland was good enough that maybe he'll get a title fight at some point, but did have a problem of making poor decisions in fights. Dricus du Plessis looked solid, but didn't have that separating thing. I didn't think that he'd get over the hump until he knocked out Robert Whittaker, and I went, oh, okay, all right. So both these guys kind of, I didn't early on in their careers think they had that championship thing that would make them great. But they proved me wrong, and now they're fighting in a rematch for the title. The X factor here, there are a couple of them. Number one is the idea that, as Teddy Atlas says, some people get 30% better as champion. Just having that belt, being vindicated, validated, however you want to put it, as champion means something. To me, Dricus du Plessis is one of those guys that being champion made him better, more confidence. He was already a confident guy, but I think it gave him even more, justified all the hard work, all that stuff. So I think being champ made him much better. And I think we saw that in the Izzy fight. Obviously, get the finish on him. Izzy on a little bit of a slide, so you can discount that a little bit. The other factor here is whether or not you think he beat Strickland last time out, and plenty of people don't. It's almost 50-50 split about who won that fight. He's seen the style before. And part of Strickland's offense, or why people have trouble with him, is he has this Philly shell kind of boxing style that you rarely see in MMA. It generally doesn't work that well in MMA. He's made it work. Eric Nixick has done a great job kind of altering his style for MMA. He has a good outside game with these teeps that kind of throw you off balance. Then when he gets inside, he throws these combinations, and it's worked really well. But it takes you by surprise in the fight because that's hard to simulate in the gym. Not a lot of guys fight that way. So your sparring doesn't look like that. So you're getting ready for it, and you're kind of seeing that style for the first time in the octagon. Dricus du Plessis isn't. He's fought him already before. And whether you thought he won or lost, he's seen the style. He knows how to deal with it. And so I think that added confidence, I think the power advantage goes to Dricus du Plessis. I think punch for punch, du Plessis hits harder than Strickland. Strickland generally throws combinations, and it's going to be like a 2-to-1 punch ratio to me. It has to be for Strickland. I don't think he's going to have that because du Plessis has seen the style before and knows how to deal with it better than most fighters would. So those two factors make me lean toward Dricus du Plessis for sure. Let's take a look at the odds here. And it is Dricus du Plessis. 2-1 is too much. They have Dricus on DraftKings minus 205. I don't see that at all. The over's minus 200. All of that makes sense. I think he's going to have a hard time finishing Sean Strickland. The only thing I can think of where you can make money on Dricus du Plessis is if you do believe, because I think it gives him a slight edge, having faced this style before and having the power advantage, it might give him a huge edge, and he's able to catch Sean Strickland, because the over-under is like 4.5 rounds. If he finishes him at all, you're going to make money. Maybe he catches him. And also a frustrated Sean Strickland. We've seen him make mistakes before where, he just tends to kind of fight with his guts, especially if he's down a couple rounds and Nick's going, hey, you got to do something. It might make him take some risks that he wouldn't normally take against the guy with the power of Dricus du Plessis. I got to go with du Plessis. I got to go, if you want to make money, once again, he's a minus 200 favorite, so you can make some money. But go with the under. Maybe he catches him, gets him frustrated, gets him overreaching at a certain point, and is able to clip him before 4.5 rounds. So that's how you're going to make money. Appreciate you. Enjoy the fights, and I will see you Monday. Give me a like, give me a subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comment section.